Today we're going to find out if a GeForce RTX 2080 can still game at ultra-wide resolutions now and in 2023. Like me, you might be wondering if you really need to spend $2,000 in order to get a great ultra-wide gaming experience, or if your existing card or a used RTX 2080 will be able to get you through the next year. The RTX 20 series is in a bit of a unique spot on the used market, as it was never the new kid on the block during a mining boom. Most of the cards you're going to find are going to be from other gamers. Today we're going to test two different ultra-wide resolutions, as well as we're going to test that stock and overclock settings. Now, let's see what this card can do. The GPU we'll be testing today is the GeForce RTX 2080. The stock clocks are 1710 MHz boost clock on the graphics core and 1750 MHz clock on the memory. For the overclock, we'll be running 17% overclock of 300 MHz on the graphics core and a 40% overclock of 700 MHz on the memory. This will be running on my AMD R7 5800X 3D test bench, running low latency DDR4 3200 memory and Windows 11 with the latest game-ready drivers from Nvidia. Without any further ado, let's get into the benchmarks. Here we are testing Cyberpunk, one of the most demanding modern games, and despite being 3 years old, this 2080 is not immediately falling on its face, even at ultra settings with FSR off. The standard ultra preset turns FSR on by default to try and help you out by running a game at lower resolution than upscaling it. Using ultra-wide 1440p at stock setting has the 2080 coming in at 44.9 FPS on average, just 0.1 FPS shy of my 45 FPS threshold for acceptable performance in a single-player story-based game. Our overclocked performance gives us an impressive 24% performance improvement, bringing us up to 55.7 FPS, well within the acceptable performance range, but not quite making it to smooth performance, which is 60 FPS plus. Now, looking at our ultra-wide 1080p performance results, we see a huge jump in frame rate of 57% for our stock 2080, giving us a 70.6 FPS, nicely situating us in smooth gameplay territory. Our overclock only gives us 5% boost at this resolution, bringing our FPS to 74.2. My guess as to why the performance increase of the 1440p overclock is so much higher than the 1080p one is the 1440p results are memory constrained, where the 1080p ones are not. Therefore, the large overclock we're getting on our memory is really helping out the 1440p results. The next game we're testing is Forza Horizon 5 on the Extreme preset. Here we can see that even our stock 2080 at ultra-wide 1440p clears the 60 Hz mark, giving us smooth gameplay. Our overclock boosts us up 7% to 65 Hz, putting us a little more comfortably in the smooth gameplay zone. Our ultra-wide 1080p gameplay gives us a modest 25% boost to stock performance, making this all that much smoother at 76 FPS, but still falling short of getting us to high refresh rate gaming territory. Our overclock doesn't get us much here, with just 2% performance increase, bringing us to 78.3 FPS. Next up, we have Horizon Zero Dawn, being played at the ultimate quality preset. At stock, ultra-wide 1440p, Horizon runs at a comfortable 70.3 FPS average. The overclock nets us 4% more performance, bringing our FPS up to 73. Looking at our ultra-wide 1080p results, we have our first game that runs in high frame rate territory, with stock performance bringing us to 96 FPS, a 37% increase over our 1440p results. A modest 7% increase from our overclock cracks the 100 Hz barrier, netting us 103 FPS. This is one of two games in our suite where the 1080p results benefit more from the overclock. The fourth game in our test suite is Immortals Fenyx Rising, running at its ultra-high preset. Our stock ultra-wide 1440p results put it squarely in the acceptable performance range for a game of this type, giving us 50 FPS. Our overclock is a tidy 13%, bringing performance up to 56.7 FPS. The ultra-wide 1080p results net us a 39% performance increase, catapulting us into smooth performance territory at 69 FPS. With a measly 2% improvement from our overclock, it barely nets us a single additional frame. The final game in our roundup is Shadows of the Tomb Raider, running on its highest preset. The 2080 is providing a pleasant 69 FPS at a stock settings at the 1440p ultra-wide resolution. A 6% improvement from the overclock gets us up to 73 FPS. At ultra-wide 1080p, we see a 39% increase in FPS, bringing us back to high refresh rate gaming with a very smooth 96 FPS. And our 8% improvement from our overclock once again breaks the 100 Hz barrier, delivering 104 FPS. Tomb Raider is the other game in this test suite that saw more benefit from the overclock at 1080p than the the one at 1440p. And it is also another game that can hit a high refresh rates at 1080p resolution. Rounding everything up in our 5-game average, we see that the stock 2080 at Ultrawide 1440p is the only one to miss the smooth gameplay milestone, leaving it stuck in acceptable territory. Everything else is in smooth gameplay territory. Unfortunately, even at 1080p, the results fall short of making it to the threshold to be considered a high refresh rate performer. Our overclock averaged 10% performance at 1440p and 5% performance at 1080p. All in all, a pretty good showing for the venerable RTX 2080. All games were tested at their max settings, sans ray tracing, or any AI or algorithmic performance enhancer. Considering that if you're willing to turn down the settings to high or turn DLSS or FSR on where available, this card could last you well into 2023 at these resolutions. If you have an RTX 2080 and are looking to buy an Ultrawide, but wondering if your experience will suffer, I think you are pretty safe to proceed. If you're a budget Ultrawide gamer and you have an eye on a used 2080 deal, I think you will find it'll be a pretty smooth experience as long as you're willing to play with the setting. As the very first ray tracing card and the first card to support any form of AI resolution scaling, I'd like to test how these aspects have aged in the coming videos. Thank you so much for watching my video. Please like and subscribe and let me know what other Ultrawide content you want to see me working on in the comments below.